What's up, everybody? How's it going? Got a special guest in the house, Mr. Ben Cage. That's how you say it, right?
Cage, that's it.
Hey,
What's going
welcome
on,
to the
everyone?
channel, buddy.
Thank you, brother. No, I've been a fan for a while, so it's good to come on. And yeah, man, there's a lot to talk about. So I think this is the first
Yeah.
stream I've done since all this craziness broke out. So yeah, I'm
Oh,
excited to
hell
get into it as
yeah.
well.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, man. I know you've come on the scene relatively recently. You've been around for a good couple months now, but I've been enjoying your content a lot, and I've been wanting to have a conversation with you for quite a while, and I'm glad we were able to make it happen, man.
Appreciate it, man. Yeah, much the same with you as well. I've been liking a lot of the stuff that you've been putting out. I've been checking out today even a lot of the previous videos you've done, but yeah, it's kind of a whole new ball game now, huh? Or a whole new era
Right.
of Richard Hart and Pulse and Hex and all
Right.
that good stuff. So a lot of craziness going on, a lot of stuff happening on Twitter as well. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be an interesting
Yeah.
couple weeks and months, I think.
Yeah, it's this funny double-edged sword, man. It's like all the intentions on us, but like, is it some of it is like, is it the attention that we want from specific entities and stuff like that?
It is. Do you
And
know
the
what though? It is really a double-edged sword because
Mhm.
as we start going into a period of time that's kind of on the ramp up to the bull market, there is a real strong case to be made for any publicity is good publicity, right? I mean, and
Yeah.
that sounds really strange, but especially with what's going on and kind of what is right now anyway, at least by all the newbies and the people that were not familiar with the ecosystem, seems to be really negative news. And if
Mhm.
you look, I mean, I've been checking the news out, and as you would expect, it's a bit of a mixed bag. You have a lot of the crypto experienced outlets, let's say, who have been in the trenches, in the weeds with all things crypto and understand how the space has evolved. They've dug in and they've been along for some of the ride with a decentralized narrative and what Richard Hart
Mhm.
and his ecosystem stands for. So you're getting a viewpoint of, hey, you know what? Fuck the SEC. This is kind of, all the selling points that we love about the ecosystem are really being kind of put to the forefront. Then, of course, you have the CNBC and all of the kind of more consumery, headline
Mhm.
grabbing stuff, focusing on, look at this guy in a top hat talking about his watches. He's just scammed a
Mhm.
bunch of people. So it's like, look, in my opinion, and to kind of jump right in, I think obviously it's very difficult to, certainly short term, to really estimate where things are going to go from a narrative perspective.
Yeah.
I love the fact, by the way, that right now we've kind of bounced back a lot on price already. I mean, we've kind of dipped
Mhm.
and then dipped again, and then we dipped even more, and then we started to go back up because we have one of the strongest communities in the space. And
Yep.
it's like people are seeing the opportunity. And thank God that a lot of people kind of went through some of the same stuff with Hex back in the day where it
Mhm.
dipped a million times and they're used to holding strong. And so it's a harder community to shake than perhaps other
Mhm.
communities. And we've seen the SEC kind of grasping at straws with a lot of other entities as well. And this, I'm being sporadic here with my thoughts because there's so
No,
much to
please.
say. But I will say, like, in my opinion, in the short term, we have a situation where we're going to come out negativity first to the masses, right? Because
Mhm.
while we do have a strong core narrative of, even BitBoy talking about how strong, the unique selling points of Richard Hart and the ecosystem are, and why the SEC is in the wrong, and pointing out really that anyone supporting the SEC or jumping on this negativity bandwagon is essentially just promoting a lack of freedom, right? It is, and
Mhm.
they don't even know it. They're just used, they get the Eric Walls of the world who is no real set. People follow him. He has a massive following on
Yeah,
Twitter
he
for
does.
what reason? People want to follow someone who's being, kind of against freedom, taking opportunity away from folks. You're going to get that
Mhm.
narrative. You're going to get a lot of folks who are new to the space, new to crypto, maxis of other coins that have, for some reason, an inherent kind of hatred or resentment to other tokens, other ecosystems that have done well. And that's going to
Mhm.
be the narrative for the masses, at least for the next couple of weeks. But then,
Yep.
we have the documentary coming out in cinemas now, right? Very looking forward to. I'm going
Mhm.
to the premiere tomorrow in Miami, which I'm super excited about. Um,
Oh,
but
hell
I think
yeah.
that that in itself is going to create a whole different bunch of publicity, albeit probably due to some of the cringeworthiness of it, it's probably going to feed the narrative, to be honest with you, of that whole scam. Something that we've probably passed in our own minds on the hex side of things. Early doors, we kind of fought that scam narrative, and we've moved past it. It's being brought to the forefront yet again. We're going to go over old ground, but that offers up an opportunity. It offers up the same way that a lot of other people within this community were, what's the word? I mean, they were converted, let's say, from kind of non-believers into believers. If we are able to put that megaphone in place, and I think, people have kind of have mixed opinions on this, but if we're able to bring Richard Hart into that conversation now, if he does get a bit more vocal and really talk to the masses, now he has this pedestal in a very intelligent way that is juxtaposed to kind of at first glance what they're going to see. There's a huge opportunity to convert a heck of a lot more people. And I think that, part of that silver lining too, aside from the pedestal that we have, and, if providing we're able to provide that lens for, the newbies to look through, I also think that in and of itself, the SEC is going after pretty credible currencies, pretty credible, tokens. Coinbase, we're mentioned along, if you look at some of the articles that are coming out, Hex, Pulsechain, it's mentioned alongside Coinbase and Binance now as of today. And so, it's a mixed bag. We're seeing there's some opportunity we can unearth. And I think in the long run, it's going to be very good for us, providing obviously that we, as long as we come out of it in the same way that a Ripple is, for instance, where we're able to showcase that it's not a scam. And look, now while this has been going on, we've been given a megaphone to start educating people so that they're not just coming into crypto and taking everything at face value. They're going through the same learning process that a lot of us have gone through over the last couple of cycles. And now they're actually understanding what these unique selling points are. And I think, and that's not just for the masses that are like inexperienced with crypto, but even a lot of the TradFi folks, and for anyone who's, I know on my channel, my kind of community, I am talking a lot from the viewpoint of a traditional finance entity or person. And I think that the same rules apply. I think that right out of the gates now, over, certainly while this is fresh, it's probably going to be more negative than positive. But I think then as things start to gain legitimacy, and it's not just this guy scammed people, that it's, hold on a minute, this community is putting up a fight. This person is I like what he has to say. I'm going to get an opportunity to actually listen to him because he speaks the same language as a lot of the TradFi investors, because he knows what he's talking about. It isn't just, vaporware coming out of his mouth. It's actual substance. And I think that the same rules are going to apply. I think he's going to convert a lot of those folks too, which, and I've always said, I'm a big believer, the proof right now is kind of there in terms of a lot of the attention from traditional finance. All that money is making its way over to crypto in various different formats. I think that whereas before I was more of the opinion that it's going to take some time for that money to matriculate down to our ecosystem, or when I say our, the narrative that we're talking about, the Pulsechain ecosystem. I think that that's maybe expedited a little bit now, providing we start coming out ahead of the conversation with the SEC. I think that in itself is putting on the radar a little sooner than perhaps we would have been able to do organically. So again, like it's a mixed bag. It's not necessarily a bad thing, and I think that's kind of being reflected in the price performance right now. You're going to get panic sellers. We're not in the bull market yet, and whoever's listening to this right now, I guarantee you, I'm down a lot more than most of you, but I'm not. I'm not concerned. I jumped in with both feet because I was a big believer of the platform. And look, if we're being judged, and Richard Hart is being judged on where things or I guess the security conversation, let's say, or a lot of that kind of top level veneer stuff that they seem to be grasping at straws with everyone, I think we're going to come out fine. I mean, the only kind of wrench thrown in the spokes there would be if there is something going on in the back end that perhaps we don't know about, but I really don't think so. I don't think anyone thinks so. So yeah, and I'm throwing a lot of thoughts out right there. I'll give you a chance.
No, that was great, man.
I'd love to hear your take on
I appreciate
that.
Yeah, no, all of that was great, and I pretty much agree with all of it. I mean, the really interesting thing, like we were saying, it's a double-edged sword because we're getting all this attention, not necessarily in the way that you would traditionally might want it to be, but yet at the same time, and this is how it's been described, you see it on Twitter, this is like the quote-unquote final boss. Like there really isn't anything worse that can happen outside of an SEC investigation. And this is something that's been talked about since the very beginning. I mean, there's an old stream of Richard with, I believe, Tone Vays and two other lawyers basically arguing on why Hex is a security, or like why the SEC would eventually go after it someday for securities fraud.
We knew
And
it was coming. We knew it was
yeah,
coming, right? We thought it would be a little bit more like grown up before
yep.
we had that. But the fact that
Mhm.
the SEC thinks it's grown up enough should kind of be a
Yeah.
positive thing for a
And
lot of us already there.
and that's a big point right there. Like the SEC actually giving public attention to Hex kind of also legitimizes it, right? Like they're not going to spend
Sure.
time, they're not going to waste their time and their resources going after something small that's only affecting a couple people. They want to, especially even the individual lawyers, right? Like they're trying to make names for themselves. They're trying to propel themselves up their own little bureaucratic hierarchy within there. So the people, and I think I even heard it's a more newbie rookie SEC agent who's going after Hex, trying to make a name
Really?
for themselves, right? So they've identified that there is actually a movement where a theoretical win is good for their career, which implicitly implies that there is some legitimacy, or at least from a network effect, like people participating in the system. There's enough of people where a win there would be substantial for these people. Now, the bad part for them, just like you were saying, is that this is a community forged in fire already, who is always kind of seen as like the bastard child of crypto. And we're seeing the exact same arguments that were being used to put down Hex at the very beginning being re-brought up, and even more elementary ways based on the documents, the SEC documents. They're just being brought up again. I mean, it's a whole meme where it's like you go from Tone Vays asking where'd the ETH go to now Gary Gensler is asking where'd the ETH go. It's the same arguments that all of us, at least within the community, have thought about and have rebuttals to for years. And now it's just getting a public, national and international. These arguments are being given a bigger stage to have this discourse, and
Hundred
and
percent.
and there's no way, and I will say no way, but the fact that we've already as a community had this discourse and these conversations, and that no new information has actually been brought to the table, it makes it easier for us. And actually, we're fighting more from a place of what's the word I'm looking for, more from a place of power, more from a place of strength. That's what I'm saying. We're fighting from a place of strength because philosophically we've worked through this stuff, and it doesn't actually shake our resolve as significantly as it would, say, for another community where
Hundred
new
percent.
information is being brought to the table, and or new arguments are being brought to the table that actually shakes people's resolve in the protocol. And really, the end of the day, what matters is their participation. Are people sticking around? And I think, at least, it's only been 2 days. You can only say so much. But for the most part, people have rallied behind this rather than scattered.
I couldn't agree more. And I think, I mean, you're right in so many ways, right? We're somewhat indirectly given some legitimacy. Just the fact that, they, like you said, if it is those, I didn't know that, but if it was some up and coming lawyers who are
Yeah,
looking to make a name for themselves on our back, good luck with that. I mean, look,
yeah,
anyone's entitled to try to make a name, but you're not slaying this giant, right?
hmm
It's a very difficult conversation, especially for some newer folks to have, because it was set up with this in mind. From the get-go,
hmm
Richard Hart has been pretty vocal about it not being a security. These are the reasons why. If anything, it's probably the most positioned ecosystem to not be part of this conversation. But hey, you're never going to stop people kind of having that. But I think there's a real opportunity to change the narrative and go from someone who, or sorry, an ecosystem that is being positioned as a scam, to flying the flag for a lot of the
hmm
decentralization conversations that should be happening. I'm a big believer in cryptocurrency going through. I mean, we know this. I mean, not even I'm a big believer; it's fact, right? We're going through a bit of an evolution in terms of decentralization being a major core component going forward because of all
hmm
of the inherent benefits that we know of, right? It's the whole reason crypto was invented, or at least one of the main reasons that we all see joint benefit in. And so I think this in itself gives us that pedestal to shout from the rooftops a lot of the unique selling points that we love about it, and fly that flag and change that narrative. And so, as a community, And I think we're doing a pretty good job of it so far. But communicating to any and all newbies coming in that to support us is to support so many of the positives of the crypto space. It's to forge a path forward that isn't governed by, a Gary Gensler, right? And I'm sure it's not just
Mm-hmm.
him, but we're demonizing him a lot, but probably for good reason. He's
Mm-hmm.
yet to showcase, any real major motivation aside from trying to keep control of the masses. And
Mm-hmm.
it's and it's dangerous. And I tweeted. I'm sure you may have seen my tweet the other day, but I was ranting a little bit about like an Eric Wall where he's got a big following on Twitter, and for God knows why a lot of people follow him, but he's promoting and celebrating a win in such the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
When you as a person, as a community, are at risk of losing certain freedoms that we have or should have, and you're celebrating the machine that's kind of trying to gain momentum in that way, it, why would anyone kind of celebrate that, right? You can be a maxi of Bitcoin, hate Hex for so many reasons, but you should be joint in your philosophy of freedom, unless you are part of the machine
Mm-hmm.
yourself in whatever way. But not many people really are, or if they are, it's only a short-lived kind of tenure. But
Mm-hmm.
it's a tough thing for a lot of us in the space to get our head around. People willingly shutting the doors down for their own freedom, for their own choice, for their own asset growth. And another tweet I made the other day. You're seeing even people now that like Ben McKenzie, right? That actor who was on
Mm-hmm.
the OC. He's on some other Gotham and some other
Yep.
pretty well known guy. Released a book that was so uninformed about, like, it was crypto from like 15 years ago, 10 years ago, maybe, however.
Before it existed.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just like it built the whole narrative of his book, kind of surrounding how crypto is full of lies, and it's an easy narrative to build traction around because you're able to capture the minds of so many dismissive people who don't give themselves an opportunity to capitalize in so many different ways, right? It's like my grandma who's dismissive of the internet, right? It's like,
Yeah.
those same folks. It's so easy to get some kind of a backing, but you look at any of the media outlets, for instance, who reviewed the book, talking about how it was a flop because it was just uninformed. It just positioned him as ignorant. And I think the same thing is going on now in so many different areas of crypto because of the SEC cracking down. They're leading, communities who don't know any better. And I think that, one thing that other communities could have done better, like a Ripple, for instance, because albeit Ripple was the first major lawsuit, right? Or at least, it's been going on for the longest time. The community didn't really rally in the right way to educate folks. I think that no one really took it on themselves to lead the charge in that kind of education, and certainly right away, because it probably wasn't the time for it. Maybe, the crypto landscape as that kicked off was a lot smaller. And so a lot of people who were already in crypto, all they were concerned about was getting out at a good price and moving on to the next token, right? But now I think we're in a situation where that sentiment is very different. I think that now the SEC, the US is behind so many other jurisdictions, and people like Gary Gensler don't really see the opportunity cost of not providing an economic landscape where crypto is able to be utilized in creative ways. I think that it's a ticking clock as to when they're going to have to just embrace, because they're behind so many of the jurisdictions now. There's no other real choice. But this last attempt, or it might not even be the last attempt, but it seems like, this kind of gasping breath of the SEC to simply reach out and try to grab as many different projects as possible, ecosystems as possible, and create as much negativity as possible so that they're able to create, I don't know, a negative, ignorant sentiment with the folks who are already ignorant. It's a spiral. It's a negative spiral that, for me, it's an inevitability that we move past it. And I just hope we move past it rapidly enough with Hex, and or with the Pulsechain with Richard Hart, to educate as we go and really turn this situation around so that it's a benefit for us. And if anyone, out of all the founders out there who are able to do this, I think Richard Hart is a really great example of that. And like I say, we do have this documentary launching, which, it's a mixed bag, right? Because there's a reason Richard Hart changed his own persona. And I get it. Outrage marketing was used for X, Y, and Z. But when you start talking big boy money, you've got to start changing and speaking the same language, right? Or at least not
Mhm.
positioning yourself as a cartoon character. It's a
Yeah.
shame that I say this too. It may not be a shame. It may be a positive thing too. But in my mind, my initial thoughts are, it's a bit of a shame that it's coming out, this cartoon character image of him, at
Mhm.
a time where there's a scam narrative kind of being re-injected into the atmosphere. But
Yeah.
again, I think that we get him on a few, or he gets himself on a few interviews and a few, he actually sits down now and has a bit more legitimacy, more mainstream media feeling
Mhm.
obliged to interview him, because now it's not just, hey, this guy has a crypto token, he wants to get on, I don't know. Now it's like, oh shit, you're being sued by the SEC. This is a major story. We need to get behind this.
Mhm.
That's the pedestal we're talking about. And so
Mhm.
coming on to that, and him in whatever creative, strategic, tactful way he's able to present himself as this is me now. You understand, hey, TV person, audience watching, you're all clever people. You understand why I adopted such a persona. Now it's time to
Mhm.
actually talk legitimacy. The same intelligent
Yeah.
things that I've been saying before, dressed up as a cartoon character and wiggling my diamonds. People were able to look through that and understand the different things that not everyone has that ability. And so I'm going to put it
Yeah.
now on a bit of a silver platter for you all and show you exactly what we're fighting for and what you should be fighting for.
Yeah.
He's the perfect person, and we have the perfect community to achieve that, I think.
Yeah, I don't know, and I won't say this was necessarily planned, but the whole phasing of personality from, kind of a really knowledgeable borderline tech nerd at the beginning when he was doing these 8-hour live streams to bombastic kind of, in your face show off to now a little more recluse, but like also highlighting the more positive aspects, a more palatable version. It narratively fits really well with what's going on in the greater space,
It
because
does.
from a mimetic standpoint and like from an ironic standpoint, all of these different clips that we have of Richard waddling around in Louis Vuitton and shaking his ass on stage and like dancing on a stripper pole, it's like the quintessential like scammer vibe persona, yet underneath it is actual legitimacy. So it allows people to easily build narratives around him, yet while grabbing that attention, which gives him the perfect opportunity to then come in and then provide that legitimate angle that he has,
For
right?
sure.
So for example, like, we all know Ethereum, the ETH Foundation, has sold like $100 million worth of ETH, right? Like, can you imagine if we had blockchain transactions of the OA selling even like $1 million of it? Like, people would lose their goddamn minds. But Ethereum has sold, 7 to 9 figures worth of Ethereum. The founders with a blockchain that was pre-mined, no less. Like it doesn't get any more quote unquote scammy than that. But you look at Vitalik, and he's some kind of super nerd that like no one really cares to
It's the power of the
criticize because
persona, right?
the power of the persona. But Richard Hart has put on the persona of the quote unquote scammer, giving the ammunition to the people, and it at least gives them the attention, allows it to penetrate the algorithm because it has that big mimetic value, because you can portray so much irony with these clips, grabs the attention, and at least offers the opportunity for the education to happen that you were just talking about. I don't know if this was on purpose, but at the very least, this is the opportunity that I see that's present.
Goes to show, man, like image is everything a lot of the time. You see it
Mhm.
too with influencers, and and I'm not blaming anyone really. I mean, it all plays a role, but
Yep.
the content, right, or the what you're saying is only a small part of it. Sometimes you'll see
Mhm.
some financial gurus or some tech gurus come onto YouTube, and they'll have, let's say a Swedish accent or a German accent, and
Mhm.
they'll be speaking English, and they'll be so like slow and reserved that you can't help but be sucked in. I think they know what they're talking about. And they're saying the same thing that
Mhm.
everyone else is saying, except they're not as
Yeah.
personable, and therefore they're putting themselves on a bit of a pedestal. Richard kind of took the other the other side of that. But like you said, there was still the underlying substance there. There was a lot of very
Mhm.
smart things, and it was an amalgamation of like a couple different personas all in one. And I think that and I know I said this on Twitter the other day, and I had a little bit of pushback from some people who had the narrative of,
Mhm.
oh, you don't expect him, he doesn't work for you. And I'm like,
Mhm.
I'm not suggesting this billionaire works for anyone. But what I'm saying
Mhm.
is, in order for us to see ultimately price performance or a much wider adoption of this ecosystem, him coming out to achieve that kind of spin on the narrative is definitely going to be necessary. We can't have him be silent during these times just because
Mhm.
he doesn't work. I mean, people are losing focus there. Like, yes, I get it.
Mhm.
You've swallowed the Kool-Aid on the, don't expect what sorry, anything from the work of others. And that's great. And that's something that we should be utilizing. Certainly when it comes to the SEC, it's something that he's put out there and to cover his own bases, and it's great. And I completely agree. However, you also can't leave the community high and dry without coming out and like a lot of the reason, me personally, that I was invested into the Richard Hart ecosystem was because of him. Look, again,
Mhm.
I was fighting my preconceived notions of him, but actually liked what he had to say. Now, him coming out and addressing this head on, speaking the same magic that got a lot of us interested, professing those same unique selling points with a lot less of a abrasive persona to go with it, can only be good things. So I think that it it's kind of the same. It frustrates me a little bit when you hear people just spouting the same comments over and over, losing track of what the end goal is. Like, is anyone in this not to see some real good price performance? I don't think so. I mean,
Mhm.
look, I love freedom and choice and all that stuff as much as the next person, but ultimately, it's got to actually achieve something too for me, right?
Yep.
And so I really think that we do have an opportunity to switch the narrative, or at least to utilize that pedestal in the right way. It's definitely 100% going to take Richard Hart leading the charge there. We already have a
Mhm.
community that's going above and beyond every single day. There's a lot of streamers, and yeah, I get it. We all kind of want to protect our own bags a little bit, but the other
Mhm.
side of that is we don't, in our opinion anyway, or my opinion, we don't really need to fight that much. I think it's an inevitability that the price of all these coins goes up coming in the bull cycle. I think that we're going to be the
Mhm.
story of the next bull cycle one way or the other. And I think it's all going to be
Yep.
positive. It's just, we've been faced with coming out of the gates, certainly post Hex, in a bear market with some perhaps unrealistic expectations from
Mhm.
most people, but again, manageable because we're still at the bottom of a bear cycle. And I think it's more we trade sideways for a while leading up to the bull cycle. It's good for stabilization, all that good stuff. Then we had the SEC thrown at us. I mean, there's a lot of weak hands that have been shaken out, but the price
Mhm.
performance speaks for itself, where we've seen a lot of that community rallying behind it. And I don't know, maybe because I've never been so entrenched in a community before, but I've never witnessed so much pushback and spreading of the positive narrative in the face of stuff like this than I ever have. And so, I guess I'm a long way of saying it, but I really do think that it is going to be paramount that we hear from Richard more frequently than he has. He's been quiet for the last
Mhm.
couple months, and that's fine because there's nothing really to say. He's been vocal about the updates and a lot of that stuff, but I do think if there's anyone that can turn this around to our benefit, to his benefit, it's him.
Yep. 100%.
Yeah.
My opinion on that, because that's one of the criticisms I've gotten so far, where it's like, how do you feel that so much of the price performance is dependent on one single guy basically being public or not? And
But it's the
that's
same with
one.
stocks. It's the tailor's
Yeah.
oldest time. I mean, it's a stupid argument, in my opinion, for anyone to say,
Mhm.
"Oh, you shouldn't be dependent on the founder." What do you mean? Like a company is always dependent on a CEO. It's always, and I
Yep.
know it's a different structure. And we're trying to, on the one hand, we're trying to celebrate the fact that it's not dependent on anyone. It's a mutable code. It's all of this good stuff. And on the other hand, it's like I don't give a shit. I'm in this for price performance. So surely
Yep.
any positive. I'm not concerned with defending the fact that he doesn't work for us. Yeah, fine, but
Mhm.
come out and speak about it
Yep.
because I think that like tradition, and it's not going to change. It doesn't matter how decentralized we are. The fact that we
Mhm.
have spokespeople, that's what influencers are. That's what community members are. To
Mhm.
whatever extent, someone is always responsible for a certain amount of clout. Just so happens that Richard Hart's a founder. Vitalik's the
Yep.
founder. Like he's responsible for the clout. He hasn't been so entrenched in his community from a streaming perspective. He set it up differently from day one. And
Yep.
it has a lot of the benefits of being one of the, Ethereum is one of the first things. It's been around forever. It's got so many different, different kind of structural elements in place that it takes different ammunition to move the needle. But Hex, Pulsechain, PulseX hasn't been set up that way. And so just because some people want to choose to prioritize the fact that the ecosystem shouldn't be dependent on somebody speaking, doesn't affect the fact that it's still going to be dependent on it, at least to a certain extent, until we reach mega status where every man and his dog knows about us, which, hey, this may help expedite that. But sorry to jump on the bandwagon, but I've heard so many things that, I heard
spin
a
on
lot
your
of
mind,
people
Ben.
on Twitter have been saying the same thing, and I'm like,
yeah,
I agree.
well, the way that I framed it, at least personally, where it's like what you're saying. The centralization of attention is inevitable, and it's kind of like a Pareto principle kind of thing, where it's like it just naturally if there is attention on a certain thing, it's naturally going to centralize amongst a smaller number of entities, whether it be a person or whatever it is. In our case, founders / CEOs. And that you can even spin that as a bullish thing, where one of the fundamental analysis principles or pillars that you would look at when evaluating a coin or a stock is the leader, right? Like one of SpaceX's and Tesla's biggest pluses is Elon Musk and his controvery and his ability to be a public figure, right?
Dogecoin,
but
Elon Musk,
even bring it back to crypto. Elon Musk has pumped a lot of people's bags just because of who he is, not necessarily because of fundamentals or any kind of actual substance besides his persona, his personality as a cult leader, basically, but there's an implicit assumption underlying that, where it is, if something can stand on its own without a founder, that's actually a very bullish thing. And I think that's the situation we have in Hex, where the community for over a year now, where Richard Hart has been pretty much silent, has been self-governed itself, or at the very least been self-sufficient, only with influencers and Twitter personalities, where it becomes a situation where Richard Hart coming back on a live stream has become such a bullish event. Like, one of the reasons there's a while I didn't like Richard Hart live streams as much, but one of the things that I really came to appreciate about them,
we're on the same boat with that. Yeah.
Well, honestly, I was just kind of bored with him. I came at the latter end where he wasn't giving new information as much because he was already popular. It was really more at the beginning when he was giving that like really deep knowledge that nobody else was really talking about publicly, and then later his chat was just filled with people who didn't know what
throwing
they were
out the same
about.
lines every single time.
Exactly.
And that's fine too. I mean, it's a way to drill it home. I mean, he's thinking of creative ways to market too. But I get what you're saying. I was in the same boat.
But the thing that I came to appreciate about his live streams were that they were kind of pivotal moments in the community, where when Richard Hart talked, the context of the ecosystem changed, right? Like his voice, his perspective, and his words literally change how we interact with each other and how we view the entire ecosystem. And that's a pretty powerful thing, in my opinion. And that's what I became to appreciate about them more, that before he went live and after he went live, something changed about the way we thought about what's going on, whether it be for better or for worse. And that's what I'm looking forward to again, because the more time that has passed since that last live stream, the more things that are being packaged into the lens with which we are interpreting the words that he is saying, which means the degree to which change happens from I'll say from a collective subconscious level within the community is that much more magnified. And I'm really excited just to watch it and participate in
it. I agree, man. I didn't really even think about that in terms of self-governance of the ecosystem, and yet using the same tools like a stream to just appropriate more importance to them because they happen less frequently. I completely get that. I also feel like there is a time and a place where he needs to step in and be a little bit more frequent, or a lot more frequent. I will say this too. I mean, look, you just mentioned that we were just talking about Elon Musk. If ever there was a moment, and hey, knock on wood, if there was ever a moment to bring him into our narrative, we know he hates the SEC. We know that, he, looking back to a few of his interviews before, he's openly stated his hatred of the SEC. He's, his adherence to the jurisdiction has nothing to do with his respect for the SEC. He hates them. And so if ever there's a time to use this narrative to our advantage and somehow get, and I'm sure that the community is probably already reaching out, but putting this on his radar, as it probably is now anyway, if he's following anything SEC related and crypto related, as we know he probably is, that's a perfect opportunity for him and to align with his own persona, his own kind of values in terms of freedom and all that stuff. It's like Dogecoin on steroids for him. Imagine he comes out, just imagine he comes out with a couple of hex Pulsechain tweets. I mean, shit, that's the territory we're veering into now. And so we're talking about silver linings. That's huge. And you think that's not going to open the floodgates to traditional finance guys suddenly taking note? They're as dumb as the rest of us a lot of the time. I can't tell you the amount of guys I know that run hedge funds. It's like doctors, right? We assume that doctors are going to be the smartest people in the world. They're pretty studious in their own field, but you talk about anything else, and they're as dumb as everyone else, right? But the same
plenty
thing.
Of crackpot doctors, pretty crazies, yeah.
Yeah, I know a lot of people in the finance space, so I don't consider to be the sharpest tools in the shed, right? And they will take a lot of this at face value, much the same as anyone else. Not just because it's easier, but because they get the sign off a lot faster too, as they start seeing market shifts in sentiment and mentality. I get it; they're not thinking about this personally; they're trying to think what the masses are going to do, and maybe so dumb is not the right word. I'd say that they make decisions with the masses, and most of the masses are naive to a certain extent. But can you imagine any of this stuff like just grabbing the attention of a big celebrity or a big kind of figure with gravitas like an Elon Musk, who we know shares a lot of our sentiments on all things governance? That would be insane. And I think that it's important for everyone to know that could happen like that.
Could happen. It's much more possible. The probability of that happening is much higher now, especially because we have we legitimately can spin narratives of true decentralized finance, true trustless, permissionless blockchain interaction. That those narratives do fall within the purview of Hex, Pulsechain, and the entire ecosystem. So someone like an Elon Musk can very legitimately pick it up and kind of run with it, which I'd love to see an actual I love Hex tweet from Elon that's not talking about the hexadecimal system. That was a fun time.
Everyone I'm going to choose to believe that's a sign from the universe, though.
Yeah, I don't remember who it was, but somebody tweeted in there, "Is like, you don't know this, but there's a certain community that's going to take this and absolutely run with it." And I'm like, yeah, we are.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, man, and that's even as we're talking now, it's almost excitement kind of driving, right? Because when you actually sit down, you talk about it, you see that the community hasn't shit the bed now. You get the panic people who sell. My dad will call me up and say, "Hey, are we selling?" I'm like, "No, what are you talking about?" I can't tell you how much I've been dollar cost averaging in the last 2 days. I'm running out of dry powder. I'm hoping it doesn't dip anymore because I'm going to be like taking out loans to get in there.
Yeah.
But I'm like, it's unusual for me to be in a situation, and I've never had this with traditional finance vehicles, even real estate, nothing, where it's like I've invested so much, but yet I do not feel the pain of it dipping, because for me, it's an inevitability where it's going. And and I tell, I have a lot of experienced investment heads who even folks that I've gotten involved in the ecosystem who have taken a look at it, really appreciate what it is, and also kind of put their VC hats on, or their stockbroker trader hats on, and they'll see, okay, wow, okay, things look sunny in the future for this ecosystem. And I think that that's telling in itself. Sometimes you get a gut feeling as to like, what to expect going forward. And I really think that this is a situation where, despite the surface level panic, like you said, there are so many reasons to think in positive stuff about everything that's going on right now. And we're very good at that. We'll see, like, Richard Hart will come out, and for any other ecosystem, he'll say something or he'll do something that could be a negative. And we've always got a way to spin it into a positive, right? But it's kind of for a reason, and he's cultivated that in himself. So I think that, again, just to kind of bring it back to the importance of him doing that on a wider stage, we're not going to get the interviews there. No one's going to call us and say, "Hey, do you want to come on CNBC and talk about this?" So you could. We don't have the clout. He's the one being sued. The only opportunity in a lot of these avenues is for him to be in front of and I think he will. I mean, why wouldn't he? He loves the limelight. and I hope that he does that, and I hope that we don't get sucked into that whole kind of, well, he doesn't work for us.
Yeah.
You may have picked up that frustrates me a lot.
No, I didn't get that at all, man. I don't know what you're talking about. Well, actually, you bring up a topic that was one of the main things I was interested to talk to you about, and that's the reception of all of this, the Hex Pulsechain ecosystem in with people who are more entrenched or who are professional in the traditional finance world. Because at least from my perspective, I'm not a traditional finance guy. In fact, crypto is really the main thing that I've gotten really heavily into from a financial standpoint, outside of buy an ETF. And
Yeah.
that's the most I'd ever thought about it. But from my understanding, the value proposition of crypto, especially Hex, Pulsechain, etc., really is, I won't say antithetical to traditional finance paradigms, but is at least not within those paradigms, where it takes a different level of the value proposition is fundamentally different when you're talking about traditional finance investing and crypto investing. And
It is.
so I just want to know, like, how are those conversations when you're introducing people in your professional world to this ecosystem, and like how has that reception been? What kind of things are they responsive to? Yeah.
I will say this. So I guess I'll start from, let's say last year, where I think, I was probably the first person to announce, I guess, if you can call it an announcement, that BlackRock was getting into, the whole
Mm-hmm.
ETF situation, the spot ETF with Bitcoin, and I mean they're looking at some mixed ones now. What I'll say is that was really around the time where a lot of my own network conversations with a lot of my old or my existing kind of network started really kicking into action a lot more than just typical kind of meet for drinks, talk about everything, including crypto. That was when a lot of the conversations themselves were purely around crypto and what that means. And the way that happened was that as soon as BlackRock started showing an interest, and you could see it through some of the real deep financial media and blogs and forums and communities. It wasn't necessarily something that was being pumped out through mainstream media as it is now, which is how I got to
Mm-hmm.
know it, really, just because that's a lot of the world that I operate in. And so it was a case of a lot of these folks seeing this and then thinking creatively how they can start leveraging crypto to take advantage of a lot of the traditional finance vehicles, right? ETFs being one of them. There are a number of
Mm-hmm.
ways, and I think they're still being worked on, right? This is this is all stuff that's looking to be leveraged, hopefully, by the bull market, but it takes a little bit of time, and a lot of it was very dependent on what happens with these spot ETFs and all of that stuff. But it started really getting the creative juices flowing with a lot of the traditional finance guys that I knew. And so I was already kind of well into the Pulsechain ecosystem by then, or at least the Richard Hart narrative and everything that goes hand in hand with that. And so with the people that the conversations that I had, let's say, strictly about that ecosystem, and that was kind of riding the coattails of some of the larger crypto conversations we were having, the conversation and the conversion was very easy, because when you kind of speak the same language as them, which isn't too hard nowadays, as crypto and finance are getting a lot closer in terms of what those selling points are, it was easy, right? And it was from a personal perspective, from their own portfolio management, from their own personal investments. It was a very easy decision. A lot of them jumped on board. A lot of them still
Mm-hmm.
very gung-ho about it, as well as other projects too. But Hex, Pulsechain, all of that stuff was an easy sell. Now, from an institutional perspective, a lot of these guys are traders. They have portfolios that they're not, it's a bit of a crazy environment right now, because they can kind of manage their own portfolio in the crypto space, but not necessarily do the same thing in the traditional space. So there's an opportunity there in and of itself for a lot of these fund managers, for instance, to inject a lot of money personally, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they can't really do that due to their FSA regulations and the series,
Yeah.
Series 7 stuff. So it was an easy sell. Now, from an entity perspective, they're only looking really, from what I can glean, certainly with the conversations that I've had, into blue chips right now, right? Which would be Bitcoin, first and foremost, and Ethereum, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
matriculating down to some
Yeah.
other kind of
That's
big
that's the risk on one to take. Like if you want to,
Well, for
yeah.
sure, and it's the same reason. When you mentioned that you only really get involved in like ETFs or something from a traditional, and there's good reason for that, because the traditional
Mm-hmm.
finance world, any good broker, any good fund manager will tell you I mean, firstly, they're set up for people who already have money as much as anything else, because you've got to be accredited to even get involved in some of these slightly more risky but more lucrative, investment opportunities. But they will tell you they're there to keep your money, not necessarily to make you money, right? They want to stay ahead of inflation. And this is why you see 6, 7, 8, 12% maybe. And that's good, because the people who already have money just want to stay ahead of inflation, make sure that they're making, that they're putting their money to work in a way that they're not losing value. And that's kind of good enough for them in a lot of ways. And
Mhm.
so a lot of the conversations from these big banks, financial institutions, investment houses, they're thinking really, in my opinion, along the same lines. That doesn't necessarily mean to say that any of us already in crypto is only going to see those kind of gains, because that, all it means for us is that they're bringing their old school investor money to the table, showing the people involved in their funds those types of returns, albeit making a little bit more money themselves. But that influx of money is going to affect us a heck of a lot more, because the kind of money they're talking about, as soon as these ETFs get the go ahead and everything's full steam
Mhm.
ahead, there are billions and trillions of dollars coming into the marketplace, because it's the future. These they want to leverage these assets just like everyone else, except the people who are the traditional investors, let's say, who are part of funds. Well, they don't need to get in the trenches so much, and so they're happy with their same. They're just told, hey, you know what, this is a lucrative space. We want to make sure that we're making the same percentages, if not a little bit better for you. The banks are going to be running away with all this stuff, but this
Mhm.
money is going to flood into the market, and we're going to see that the people who already own Bitcoin, who already own Ethereum, they're going to, as soon as they start seeing some massive price increases, they're going to sell off and buy the next thing down, because they want to capitalize on the bigger, they've graduated, right? They're more
Mhm.
educated, and that knock-on effect continues to happen. Because as that cash starts matriculating through the crypto space to past the blue chips down to the next level, each subset of people are looking to capitalize more. They've graduated through their school of thought, where they're actually, they know a little bit more, they feel more comfortable taking a risk. That's kind of how every cycle works, right? And I
Mhm.
think that we're going to have a bit more of a mega cycle this time, as soon as we get the go ahead on this, because that top level huge influx of cash is going to be larger than we've ever seen, I think. Because
Mhm.
and I know I'm taking this a little bit further, but to answer your question in terms
That's all right.
of how the sentiment I'm getting back, I will say that it's still very much in its infancy in terms of where it's going to go eventually. But I would also
Mhm.
say that that's not going to affect the money or the returns that we're going to be seeing. We all know a couple of cycles from now, we're not going to be seeing, the 100x's even, right? We only
Yeah.
have a finite amount of time until this money comes in, and then it gets more limited. It gets more, people are sanctioned a lot more. There's a lot more barriers to entry. It's going to follow the same. We're in cowboy land right now compared to traditional finance, and it's
Mhm.
fine, because we're kind of on the precipice right now of a lot of money coming into crypto, and also the freedom to capitalize on it if we play it the right way. And I think that,
Mhm.
and in all transparency, that's one of the reasons that I wanted to get involved in something like the Richard Hart ecosystem. It's has a great foundation that is built upon substance, and we're in a perfect position where, aside from this SEC stuff, which may kind of expedite our approach to marquee status, or we may go up the hierarchy a lot more in terms of legitimacy once we clear the panic mode, right? But I think
Nope. Think we lost you there, Ben. Let's see, guys. Everybody in the chat, can you hear me still? Let's see. Post one in the chat if you can still hear me. Down, back up. Let's see. Okay. Okay, looks like we lost Ben for a second, so we drop him down. Guys, if you're enjoying, thank you guys, I appreciate it. Guys, if you're enjoying the conversation, please leave a like and subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. I've been really enjoying this conversation with Ben. He's obviously very knowledgeable and brings a really great perspective to the table, especially with the news that is going on right now. Oh, he dropped. Okay, so he'll probably come back and it'll reconnect. Um, But yeah, first of all, also thank you all for watching, all 44 of you. I really appreciate. I always appreciate your guys' time and attention, and it means a lot that you choose to spend your time with me and some of the conversations that I have. Don't forget to go to Ben's Twitter and his YouTube channel, which I believe I put at the bottom in the description below. So definitely go give him a follow on all of his platforms because he is coming back on the scene, producing more content, and at least in my opinion, is very entertaining to watch. And I always learn something from watching him. Do you guys have any questions in the chat? I know a lot's been happening in the community lately, so if you want my opinion on something, go ahead and ask right now. I'll be happy to answer it. While I wait for you guys to put your questions in, I'm gonna do a little personal show just because I have the time. If you have not already, go to cryptosloth.info. Cryptosloth.info, and if you put your email in here, you'll get notified when I launch my website, which will be coming any day now. I'm planning to do a fundamentals course this month, and so the information for that will be on my site. And then I'm also launching some other products too. I'm going to run my consults through here, but also I'm going to open up a private Telegram group for anybody who is interested to traverse these crypto waters with me as we enter into more SEC bear market depths, and then also as well out of it. Let me see. So I think there's in light of the conversation that that me and Ben has been having, I think one important point to bring up, and I'm going to pull up my slides from the course that I'm about to do. So I want to show you guys one. I think that is one of it's at least where my head has been at in terms of like why opportunities like what we have right now are a big deal. When we have large wallets capitulating, because what we've seen, and I'll pull up the chart. Somebody else said it earlier, and let me pull up my charts. Let's go down. There we go. Okay, so let me find because we don't have too many. Oh, here we go. My man's back. What's up, Ben?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you, man.
Yeah, something happened to my internet and it went out, but yeah, I'm here. I have no idea, by the way.
You have what?
I have no idea where I lost you.
Oh, man. Well, we were in the middle of the conversation about the reception of crypto in the TradFi market. You were talking about how there's this big influx of money, basically billions, trillions of dollars about to come into the ecosystem. And we're going to see that trickle and percolate down to ecosystems like ours over time as people become more risk on in the system.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what I was saying is that even though the ecosystem, we're not going to be the recipient directly right out of the gates from most of that money coming in, right? We're not, I don't think right now, unless we get some real positive kind of spins on what's going on with the SEC, even though we're not going to get, that straight up investment coming directly into us, we're still going to be even more perfectly positioned to see some real massive price increase from trickling down. That's just the way it happens, right? With market cap, but they're kind of right there in the spot that they're big enough that we have to grab that to convert.
Nope. Lost them again. That's all right, guys. We're just having a little bit of technical difficulties, but we'll get them back. Anyways, what I was saying before, let's see. Yeah, he's coming back on. Yeah. Oh, I can hear you a little bit. You there, Ben? There he is. What's up, buddy? When? Yep. TradFi can't stay away from these type of games. Can you hear me, Ben? It looks like he's still trying to connect through his Wi-Fi or his cellular. Oh, There he is. Hey,
Sorry, I have no idea what's going on here.
that's all right, man. It happens.
I got out of the office. I came down to a little bit closer to the internet hub. I think there must be a storm here going on or something.
Mm-hmm. So Ben's under cyber attack. Man, you're spitting too many facts, man. They're shutting you down.
Yeah, I'm going to get the SEC. But again,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, guys. I have no idea where I lost you. I think you get where I was going with that. Just
and
we're positioned in a sweet spot, I think, to really kind of take advantage and capitalize as much as possible on a lot of these funds that are going to be entering the space without necessarily having to be, a quote unquote blue chip,
Yeah, and I think you said this when we were in the green room chatting, but so the SEC stuff that's going on has maybe even made it so it's going to take less time for that economic energy to get into our ecosystem, because we now have basically an international stage that we're being introduced to everybody by, especially if we win, have a decisive win where basically it all gets dismissed and it's officially not a security, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, yeah, and I think like it could be the accumulation of so many different kind of perfect moments where we world stage. We have the ability for a new persona, Richard Hart, to come in and speak some intelligent truth and start converting people on a much wider scale, but also simultaneously wave a banner that kind of leads the charge and has people kind of following not just the ecosystem because of its unique selling points, but because of the message that we come with, right? It's about freedom. It's important. It's probably one of the most important conversations that a lot of people are going to have in relation to the government, the SEC, and crypto in general. And so and it could be if we are able to, again, to kind of convert a lot of those mega celebrities, the big folks with the big gravitas, to come and wave our banner as well. I mean, anything could happen. It could be crazy, and I think that I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if Elon Musk is it does get brought into the narrative, because it's important. And I think that someone like him who is smart, he'll have a good notion as to kind of who's likely to win, right? And he'll know that it's clutching at straws. He'll weigh that up, or people like him will weigh that up. And you're already starting to see a lot of folks be a lot more vocal about this. The fact that we're seeing someone like a BitBoy Crypto, Ben talking about just being on the team of Hex, and people who are supporting the SEC, they are essentially the problem. That's big too, because it wasn't so long ago he was scared to say anything about Hex. He was scared to say anything about Richard Hart, because he has one of the biggest followings in the space, and he's got to be careful, how he's trumpeting certain projects. But the fact that he himself now feels comfortable enough to be talking about our ecosystem should give us an idea of that chain effect that's going to take place, where we're breaking down further barriers. The more conservative kind of mainstream folks within the crypto world start talking about us. Well, it's only a matter of time then until the TradFi people or the CNBCs of the world start also talking positively about the ecosystem too. So for a lot of people who are listening, or who may see this, it's definitely understandable that you go through some kind of internal turmoil when it comes to, oh shit, this looks bad from the surface level, and kind of go through that internal panic a little bit, like you would with any single stock. It's these moments that separate the folks who are going to make money and the ones that not, to be quite honest with you, because there are bound to be a host of folks that are selling or have sold in the last 2 days that are going to seriously regret it, because they're shooting from the hip a little bit too much and just going on the media machine. And there's power behind that media machine. These narratives are driven by mainstream media a lot of the time. But when you look a little bit further ahead, use a bit of foresight, you can see how that narrative can easily be molded and is somewhat malleable to where we need it to go. And I think that, and to bring it back a little bit, because I know I got cut off in terms of kind of the sentiment that I'm feeding from TradFi folks. Personally, I think we'll see a lot of influx, just judging by my network, which probably consists of about 25, 30 people that are, really heavy into fund management. A lot of them work for, BlackRock, for instance. I used to work at Goldman Sachs, so I have a lot of contact. Some real real kind of big entities that their internal conversations are now mostly focused around, none of them, none of these internal conversations are focused around Hex or Pulsechain right now, but they are talking about Bitcoin, they are talking about Pulsechain, and the people in those conversations privately are having those, dialogues about Pulsechain, about Hex, because it's a natural organic step into more of a DeFi situation. It's an evolution that is natural for a lot of these conversations to have, which aids our pedestal here too. Because while we're in the same breath as Scam, Sued, SEC, it's going to be decentralization. It's going to be talking about a lot of the unique selling points that we have, and I've seen that happen, albeit pre SEC stuff. But I don't think that's going to throw too much of a spanner in the works. But I think that it's a natural progression, and that's one of the selling points that I kind of wanted to. That convinced me to get involved in the ecosystem, because I saw the natural progression of thought, right? It's like anything. You start in the obvious, the Bitcoins of the world, where, every man and his dog now is aware of Bitcoin. I don't think too many people are saying that it's going to go down in value or it's not going to be here in the next, 20 years. Same thing, and if, again, without being redundant, we have a real opportunity as an ecosystem to wave that flag and, get a lot of momentum and a lot of attention and a lot of support. And I think that's only going to mean good things, providing the guy who is notoriously going to be able to get a lot of these big attention segments and interviews and whatnot is able to do that. I think he will. It'd be silly not to. So
he already has. I think he was on Fox 6-7 months ago or something like that.
He was. And to be fair, like, I do think that the sentiment of the media is going to change significantly as well. I think that, even when it comes to the documentary, I mean, I know that they had some issues getting picked up right now by a lot of these streaming services. That's likely to change. I mean, it's great that we're in movies and movie theaters, and that allows us to be able to kind of, qualify, I guess, for some of these awards, if I understand correctly.
That's what I've heard. Yeah.
Yeah, but I also do think that, just the fact that it's almost like Tiger King, right? Where there's a certain level of I don't know, that there's like a fire factor to it, where people like to celebrate what can be a what's the word? Like a real attention grabbing, scammy kind of, it's a good thing. It's entertaining.
A car crash you can't look away from, kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Dumpster fire.
Like, dumpster. Yeah.
Being able to even if we gain entry that way, that's fine too, because that's going to get us in front of a lot of eyeballs, and hopefully supplementing that is a new narrative with anyone who dares to like Google it, where we've shifted in that time over to oh shit, these guys are fighting the good fight, they're winning, they stand for X, Y, and Z. We got a lot more eyeballs now. It could be a perfect storm. It could go the other, which I really hope it doesn't, but I think we have a real opportunity for it not to.
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree. And I mean, at the very least, these initial eyeballs that we're getting from the SEC attention, the movie, and then like the media intersection between the two, that probably won't be the thing that converts people, but it'll get that initial impression or two in. And then if for some reason they hear that it's pumped really hard, then that's going to be like, oh my God, I knew about this before that pump happened. Now it's up 10, 15x. Or probably like 50, 60x from when I heard about it. What's going on here? I thought it was a scam. And then that's the catalyst to get that retail euphoria that can push Hex basically to multi-dollar targets.
And where prices are now, do you think we're not going to see 100x, 200x? That 1000x pretty achievable from where I'm sitting right now. So, yeah, I mean, it's all of these things play up. I don't want to jinx anything, but it could all mean some very, very good things. I know we've just passed an hour. I'm gonna have to make a move. So sorry for cutting out midway.
No, not at all, man.
I'm actually going to meet RG3 Captain.
Tell him I said hi.
I will, and Walrus and whatnot. At just as everyone's here now for the premiere, so we're gonna go and have a good chin wag. I'd be interested to hear some of their thoughts as well. But it'd be great to maybe even jump on a stream with all of us. I think. To get it, because I know that a lot of these guys are going to have slightly different thought processes to myself or to you, but I think the sentiment is probably going to be very similar. in terms of
Mhm.
anyone's looking at this as a panic moment. Really, I think that it's an opportunity, and so
I
I mean,
agree.
get their thoughts tonight and see what's cracking. But dude,
Yeah, share
thank
whatever you find out, man, on Twitter or privately, whatever. Please go ahead, tell us where we can find you. Show your stuff, Ben. Show your stuff.
Oh, well, you can subscribe to Ben Cage. Pretty easy. It's in the name there. My Twitter is the same, so that's nice and simple as well. I am, and just something I mentioned a little earlier on Twitter. I haven't mentioned this in any videos yet. I'm starting a community, a Patreon community based on not just crypto. And
Mhm.
it's probably important to know that too. It's not a beginner course. It's not, you're not going to get a one-on-one consultation with me or anything like that. It's really for people who have a little bit of experience, to be quite honest with you. It's going to be tracking my portfolio, not just in crypto, as the landscape changes over the coming months and years, but it's dipping into a lot of other sectors like AI, for instance, that I'm pretty entrenched in. And I think that I'm in a bit of a unique situation where I'm able to provide a little bit more context, a little bit of more of a behind the scenes in terms of what I think is going to do very well in the AI world, crypto and stocks and some other opportunities as well. So feel free to check it out as well. It's kind of getting all the ducks in a row right now, so it hasn't really kicked off yet, but maybe something to think about. I'm sure some of my videos too will be covering a lot of the AI stuff, so don't feel pressured to join the Patreon and be completely left out. But yeah, it's some
That's
exciting
awesome, man.
man. And maybe I think that's going to be a conversation, more of a conversation in the crypto space too, just how AI is affecting everything, not just from a
Yeah.
crypto token-esque perspective, but just the tech in itself and the opportunities inherent in some of this stuff as well. So I think that we'll start seeing some real interesting conversations come about as the months and years go on
For
as well.
sure. I've noticed a lot of crypto people are also very into AI at the same time. I've noticed that kind of trend. Yeah.
Yeah, well, tech is tech, and I think that we're on the
Yeah.
of some real revolutions taking place. And unfortunately,
Yeah.
I think the AI one is one that's going to put a lot of people out of work and create a bit more or a lot more of a deficit between the rich and the poor. Right? We're
Yeah.
being into a bit more of a socialist economic environment, whether people kind of see it coming or not. And so, a lot of the stuff that I want to be talking about and advising on, not financial advice, guiding, let's say.
Having conversations about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really ahead of that and making sure that you're capitalizing where you can, so that you're not high and dry when 5 years time you're replaced by a bot that doesn't cost anything, but it's making you one of the many people who are going to be dependent on a universal basic income, right? So
God, I sure hope they don't have AI dentists in the future. Then I'm really going to be out of work. Yeah.
yeah, but dude, let's do this again, man, and I promise
Yep.
I'll set up
Absolutely.
to not drop out midway through next time.
No worries, man. Ben, you're always welcome back on my channel if you ever want to chat or talk. I'm going to shoot you some stuff behind the scenes as well. Guys in the chat, please definitely subscribe and follow him on Twitter and stuff, and give it and consider joining his Patreon. I know I'm gonna be looking into it myself. So Ben, thank you for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. I think this was a great hour, a great conversation, and I look forward to more with you, man.
Appreciate it, brother. Yeah, me too. And yeah, dude, I'll let you know how tonight goes and how the premiere goes as well, and hopefully we can set something up.
Hell yeah.
Days and weeks to come.
Yes, sir. All right, everybody.
Thank
That's
you.
it for us. We'll catch you guys on the next time. See ya.
Yeah.